The night was cold, the sky heavy with black clouds, and rain fell hard against the roof of the small wooden house. Inside, Daniel sat alone near the fire, listening to the storm outside. Life on the colony world was usually quiet, but tonight felt different. Something in the air carried tension, like the calm before danger. He stood up to close the window shutters when he saw movement through the heavy rain. A figure stumbled in the mud, falling to the ground. Then rising again, Daniel froze, his heart beating faster. Who would be out here in such a storm, far away? From the town he hesitated, then grabbed a lamp and stepped outside. The wind almost blew the flame out, but he shielded it with his hand and moved closer. The figure was small, almost delicate, wrapped in a torn cloak. When she lifted her face, Daniel's breath caught. It was a girl, younger than him, her skin pale in the storm's glow, her eyes bright and strange like they held starlight inside them. She looked frightened, desperate, and too weak to keep walking. "Please." Her voice was soft, broken, but he understood the word. She collapsed in front of him, her knees sinking into the mud. Daniel looked around, nervous. Something about this did not feel right, but he could not leave her outside. Without another thought, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, as if she had not eaten for days. He carried her back to the house, his boots sinking into the wet earth. Inside, he placed her on a chair near the fire. Her cloak slipped off, and he noticed strange markings on her wrist, glowing faintly blue. His eyes widened, but before he could ask, she pulled the cloak tighter around her body. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice shaking. Daniel gave her water, and she drank quickly, almost as if she had been without it for too long. He studied her quietly. Her clothes were unlike anything he had seen on the colony, woven with threads that shimmered like silver. Her face was beautiful but unfamiliar, her eyes wider and brighter than any human's. He thought of asking questions, but something in her expression stopped him. It was fear, deep, heavy fear, the kind that came from being hunted. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, but beneath the storm's noise, Daniel thought he heard something else, a distant humming, like engines in the sky. He stepped to the window, pulling the curtain slightly. Through the rain, lights moved between the clouds, strange, sharp lights that did not belong to any colony ship. His stomach tightened. Visitors not from Earth, not from this colony, aliens. They were searching for something, or someone. Daniel turned back to the girl. She sat still, her hands clutching the cloak, her head lowered. When he looked closer, he noticed her trembling, not from cold, but from fear. She knew who was out there. "Are they looking for you?" he asked softly. Her eyes lifted, and for a moment, the firelight reflected in them like two stars. She did not answer, only lowered her head again. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But one thing was clear: by bringing her into his home, he had stepped into something far bigger than himself. The storm outside raged louder, and the humming of engines grew nearer. The colony was no longer safe tonight, and neither was the asterisk. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the valley wet and silent. Mist rose from the fields outside Daniel's house, and the air smelled of wet earth. Inside, the fire was dying, glowing faintly. Daniel woke from a restless sleep, his thoughts still troubled by the night before. The girl was still there, sitting near the fire, awake but quiet. She had not run away, and that fact surprised him. She watched the flames carefully, her face calm but her eyes distant. It was as if she carried a weight too heavy for someone her age. Daniel prepared some bread and warm tea, placing them on the table. When she looked at the food, her eyes softened, and she whispered, "Thank you," again. Her voice was quiet but clear now. She ate slowly, as if every bite mattered. Daniel studied her in the daylight. Her hair was dark, but with a faint shimmer when the light touched it. Her skin was pale, almost too perfect. And then there were her eyes, silver and bright. Not like any humans, he had seen travelers from many colonies, but never anyone like her. "Who are you?" Daniel finally asked. The girl froze for a moment, then lowered her gaze. "I cannot say," she answered softly. Her hands shook slightly as she held the cup of tea. Daniel could see the fear inside her words. He knew she was hiding something. Something dangerous. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The strange ships he saw in the night, the girl's glowing markings. The fear in her eyes, it all connected somehow. She was not from the colony, maybe not even from Earth. But then why was she here, alone, in the storm? The silence stretched until Daniel spoke again. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said slowly. "But if someone is hunting you, I need to know the truth, so I can help." The girl's hands tightened around the cup, and her silver eyes lifted to meet his. For the first time, Daniel saw a spark of trust in them. "I am not from here," she whispered. "I come from far away. Beyond your stars." The words felt heavy in the air. Daniel swallowed hard, his suspicions confirmed. She was an alien, and not just any alien. Something about her presence felt important, dangerous, like a secret hidden from the galaxy. As she spoke, Daniel noticed the faint glow on her wrist again. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, spreading light beneath her skin. Before she could hide it, Daniel reached out and touched her wrist lightly. The glow responded, growing brighter, showing symbols etched into her skin, symbols that shifted like living light. Daniel pulled his hand back quickly, startled. "What is that?" he asked, his voice low. The girl covered her wrist, her expression tense. "It is my blood," she whispered. "My birthright." The words sent a chill through Daniel. Birthright. This girl was not just someone running away. She belonged to something greater. And if the ships in the sky were truly hunting her, then she must be someone of immense value. Suddenly, a sound echoed in the distance. Engines. Again, Daniel rushed to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to see. 3 ships hovered over the far fields, scanning with bright lights. Soldiers were already moving across the ground, searching house to house. The girl stood, trembling. "They are close," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They will not stop until they find me." Daniel turned back to her, his chest tight. He could hand her over, keep himself safe, and return to his quiet life. But when he saw her frightened eyes, he knew he could not do that. He grabbed the cloak from the wall and handed it to her. "Hide your face," he said firmly. "If they come here, you stay quiet." The girl looked at him, surprised. "You would protect me?" she asked softly, as if she could not believe it. Daniel nodded. "You knocked on my door. That makes you my guest," he said simply. "And I don't turn away someone in need." For a moment, her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was the first time Daniel had seen her face soften. But the moment was short. The sound of boots echoed closer, heavy against the wet ground. Daniel's heart pounded as shadows moved outside his window. The soldiers were here. The girl's hands shook, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Daniel glanced at her and whispered, "Stay behind me." He opened the door slowly, rainwater dripping from the roof. A tall alien soldier stood there, armor gleaming, eyes sharp. "We searched this house," the soldier declared coldly. Daniel forced his voice to stay steady. "Search for what?" he asked, pretending to be calm. The alien's gaze was cold. "A fugitive," he said. "One who carries royal blood." Daniel froze at the words, royal blood. So it was true. This girl was not only alien, not only hunted, she was royalty. And he, unknowingly, had welcomed her into his home. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The alien soldier's voice was sharp, cold, and without mercy. "Step aside, human. We will search this place," he ordered. Rain dripped from his armor as 2 more soldiers appeared behind him, their weapons glowing faintly in the gray light. Daniel's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He leaned against the doorframe and crossed his arms. "What makes you think anyone would hide here?" he asked, his voice steady though his chest burned with fear. "This is a quiet valley. No fugitives come this far. The soldier's eyes narrowed, glowing faint green through his visor. Do not lie, he said. We know she is here. One with the mark of royal blood. He pushed forward. But Daniel stepped into his path. This is my home, Daniel said firmly. You don't just walk in without cause. The soldiers growled, and one raised his weapon slightly. For a moment, Daniel thought it was over, that they would storm in and drag the girl away. But then, from the sky, a voice spoke through their combs. Check quickly, do not waste time. We must search every home. The lead soldier shoved Daniel aside. Storming into the small wooden house, Daniel's hands clenched into fists. But he held his anger. Inside, the girl was hidden behind the kitchen wall, her cloak covering her. Glowing wrist, her body trembled as she heard the heavy footsteps. The soldiers scanned the house with strange devices. Lights sweeping across the walls and floor. Daniel prayed they would not detect her. One soldier stopped near the fire, sniffing the air like a predator. She was here, he muttered. I smell her scent. Daniel's chest tightened. If they searched harder, they would find her. He stepped forward quickly, forcing their attention back on him. You smell the storm, he said roughly. And the wet earth. There is no one here. The soldier glared, raising his scanner toward the back of the house. But then a voice called from outside. Captain! Tracks in the field! The soldiers froze, turning toward the call. The captain growled in frustration. We return later, he snapped. He shoved Daniel hard against the wall as he left, his armor scraping the wood. If you are hiding her, human, we will burn your home to the ground, he threatened. Then they marched out into the rain, their boots splashing mud. Daniel stood frozen until the sound of engines faded into the distance. When silence returned, he closed the door quickly, his hand still shaking, from the corner of the room. The girl stepped out, her face pale, her silver eyes wide. No, she whispered. They will not stop, her voice broke. And Daniel realized how truly frightened she was. He moved closer, lowering his voice. You need to tell me everything, he said. I can't protect you if I don't understand who you are. For a long moment she stayed silent, but then she pulled back her cloak, showing him the glowing markings on her wrist again. They hunt me because of this, she said softly. It is not just a mark, it is the seal of my family. The bloodline of the royal house of Elora. The words struck Daniel like thunder. Royal house, he remembered the stories whispers in the colony about wars far away, fallen empires, and rulers who vanished without trace. This girl was not just some refugee, she was a princess, a lost heir, hunted across the stars. Daniel rubbed his face, breathing heavily. Do you know what you've done? He muttered. Every bounty hunter in the galaxy will come here for you. She lowered her head, her voice small. I did not choose this, she whispered. I only want to live. Her words cut through his frustration. He looked at her. Again, seeing not just a royal fugitive but a scared young girl who had lost everything, he sighed. Then we need to keep you hidden, he said firmly. But not here. They will return. The girl looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. Where? She asked. Daniel stepped to the window, scanning the wet forest beyond the fields. The wilds, he answered. If we move fast, we can reach the caves in the northern cliffs before they sweep the valley again. The girl nodded, clutching the cloak tighter around her shoulders. But before they could move, a loud roar echoed in the distance. Engines again, closer this time. Daniel cursed under his breath. They're already circling back. He grabbed a small bag, stuffing it with food and a knife, then handed her a spare cloak. Stay close to me, he said. Do not make a sound. Her hands trembled as she took the cloak, but she nodded bravely. Together, they slipped out the back door into the rain-soaked fields. The ground was soft with mud, their footsteps sinking deep. Daniel moved quickly, guiding her toward the dark line of trees. Behind them, searchlights cut through the mist, sweeping across the valley. Voices shouted commands in a language Daniel did not understand. The hunt had begun, As they reached the edge of the forest, the girl stumbled, almost falling. Daniel caught her arm, steadying her. "You must keep moving," he urged. "If they catch us here, we are finished." She nodded, pushing herself forward despite her exhaustion. The forest swallowed them in shadows, branches dripping water onto their cloaks. But behind them, lights flashed and engines roared. The soldiers were closing in. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had never asked for this, never wanted to stand against alien soldiers. But now he had no choice, because the moment he let her into his home, her fight had become his, and he would not let them take her. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The forest was dark and heavy with the smell of rain. Water dripped from the tall trees, and the ground was slippery with mud. Daniel pushed forward, his cloak heavy, while the girl followed close behind, her breathing quick and uneven. Behind them, voices echoed through the valley, alien soldiers shouting orders, lights sweeping back and forth like hunting eyes. Daniel led her through twisting paths only he knew. He had lived near these woods his whole life, and the trees were like old friends, but even his knowledge of the land could not erase the fear. In his chest, the soldiers were everywhere, and their scanners could sweep through stone and soil. How long could they really hide? They finally stopped near a cluster of rocks, hidden by vines and dripping moss. Daniel motioned for her to crouch, and they sat in silence, listening to the forest breathe. For a while, only the sound of distant engines filled the night. Daniel turned to her, his voice low. "Who are you really? Tell me the truth this time." The girl hugged her cloak tighter, her silver eyes shining faintly in the shadows. Her lips trembled before she spoke. "My name is Aria," she whispered. "I am the daughter of Queen Illyra of Elora, the last ruler of my people." Daniel stared at her, stunned. He had heard the stories before, rumors about a great empire far across the stars, destroyed by betrayal, whispers that the royal family had been killed in a coup, and now here she was, the lost princess, hiding in his world, in his forest. Aria lowered her head, tears gathering in her eyes. "They came for us in the night," she continued softly. "Our palace was burning. My mother told me to run. She used the last of her power to send me away, but I do not know if she survived." Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand against her mouth, trying not to cry. Daniel's chest tightened. She was young, lost, and carrying the weight of an entire people, and now the hunters searched for her like wolves searching for blood. "Why are they chasing you?" he asked, his voice rough but steady. Aria looked at him, her glowing wrist catching faint light. "Because of this," she said, pulling back her sleeve. The markings burned brighter now, shifting like living light across her skin. "This mark is the seal of Elora, the proof of royal blood. Whoever carries it can claim the throne, and those who took my home cannot rule while I still live." The truth hit Daniel hard. If she was captured, her enemies would kill her to erase the last of her family. If she survived, she was a threat to their stolen power. That was why the soldiers hunted her with such hunger. Daniel rubbed his forehead, trying to think. He was just one man, a farmer from a quiet colony. What could he do against soldiers, ships, and an empire's worth of enemies? He looked at her again, trembling but strong enough to keep moving. She had trusted him, a stranger, because she had no one else left. Daniel let out a slow breath. "You should have run to the cities," he muttered. "Maybe someone there could hide you better than I can." Aria shook her head quickly. "No, the cities are watched. Bounty hunters wait there. Anyone who sees the seal will sell me for gold. I only came here because I thought no one would follow so far." Her words were desperate, but honest. Daniel felt the weight of her truth pressing against his heart. He could give her up, hand her to the soldiers, and keep his life simple, but when he looked into her silver eyes, he knew he could not do it. "You trusted the wrong man," Daniel said quietly, "because I won't give you away, and I won't let them take you." Aria blinked, shocked, her eyes wide. "You would fight for me?" she whispered. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "I don't know how to fight armies, But I know how to survive, he said. And if they want you, they'll have to go through me first. For the first time since he met her, Arya's lips curved into a real smile, though faint and trembling. Then I am not alone anymore, she whispered. The moment was cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps moving closer. Voices shouted in the alien tongue, and bright beams of light swept the trees. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her deeper into the rocks, but one soldier's scanner beeped sharply, the light catching their trail in the mud. Here! The soldier roared, and weapons lifted in the dark. Daniel pushed Arya behind him, his knife in his hand, his heart hammered, but his body moved with raw instinct. The first soldier lunged forward, but Daniel ducked low, slamming his shoulder into the alien's chest. The soldier fell back with a growl, his weapon sliding into the mud. Another raised a blaster, but Arya's wrist burned bright, and a pulse of energy burst out. The soldier screamed as the blast knocked him against a tree, his armor sparking. Daniel's eyes widened in shock at her power. Arya gasped, clutching her glowing wrist. I cannot control it for long, she whispered, fear in her voice. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife, stepping in front of her. Then stay behind me, he said, his voice hard. He knew now protecting her was not just kindness, it was survival, because whoever this girl was, whatever destiny she carried, the galaxy would not stop until she was either dead or crowned. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The forest exploded with noise. Shouts in the alien tongue echoed as more soldiers rushed through the trees, their lights cut through the darkness, bright beams searching every shadow. Daniel pulled Arya by the hand, his heart racing. We have to move now, he hissed. They ran deeper into the wilds, mud splashing under their boots, branches tearing at their clothes. Behind them, heavy footsteps grew louder, armored soldiers closing in fast. Blaster fire lit up the forest, beams of red searing past their heads. Daniel shoved Arya down behind a fallen log, wood splintering above them as shots tore through it. Stay low, he shouted. Arya trembled, clutching her wrist, the faint glow still pulsing under her skin. I can't use it again so soon, she whispered, panic in her voice. Daniel gritted his teeth, his knife the only weapon he carried. He peeked over the log and saw shadows moving closer, armored and armed. There was no way they could fight them all. He grabbed Arya's arm, pulling her to her feet again. Then we run, he said, determination sharp in his eyes. Together, they sprinted through the dripping undergrowth, weaving between trees and leaping over roots. Daniel's mind raced as fast as his legs. He knew the wilds better than anyone in this valley, and if they were going to survive, he needed to use the land itself as a weapon. They reached a steep ridge, the ground slick with rainwater. Daniel motioned for Arya to climb. She hesitated, exhausted, but his firm hand pushed her upward. Go, he urged. As she climbed, Daniel pulled free a heavy branch and jammed it into the mud, making the slope even harder to scale. Just as Arya reached the top, soldiers appeared at the bottom of the ridge. Their weapons glowed as they aimed up at Daniel, but before they could fire, Daniel shoved loose rocks down the slope. The wet stones rolled and crashed, sending two soldiers tumbling backward. Move, move, he yelled, pulling himself up the ridge beside her. At the top, Arya stumbled, her body shaking with exhaustion. Daniel steadied her, whispering quickly, "The caves are close. If we reach them, we can hide." She nodded, though her breath came heavy. They pushed forward again, the forest thickening, the air colder. Behind them, the sound of pursuit never faded. The soldiers were relentless, their voices echoing like hounds on the hunt. Arya glanced at Daniel, fear in her silver eyes. "They will never stop," she whispered. "They will chase me until I am caught or dead." Daniel gave her a hard look, his voice firm. "Then we make sure they never catch you." The path narrowed as they entered a ravine, the walls steep and wet. It was darker here, the canopy above blocking the moonlight. Daniel slowed, his instincts sharp. The wilds were not safe. Strange creatures lived here. things even the colonists avoided. But danger from the forest was better than certain death at the hands of soldiers. Suddenly, a screech echoed from above. Daniel froze, pulling Arya against the rock wall. A massive shadow swooped through the ravine, wings beating the air. Its eyes glowed faintly as it circled once, then vanished back into the dark sky. Arya's breath shook. What was that? She whispered. Not important, Daniel muttered, though his chest was tight. We keep moving. They reached a narrow stream, its water rushing fast from the storm. Daniel led her into the cold flow. The water will hide our tracks, he explained. Arya winced as the freezing water soaked her boots. But she followed without complaint. For half a mile they trudged through the stream, the current pulling at their legs. At last, Daniel spotted a familiar rock formation. A wide crack between two cliffs, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. He pushed aside the wet vines covering it, revealing a hidden opening. Inside, he whispered. Hurry! They slipped into the darkness of the cave, the sound of rushing water echoing faintly behind them. The air was damp and cold, but it was shelter. Daniel struck a match and lit a small torch, the faint orange glow revealing walls glistening with moisture. Arya collapsed onto the stone floor, her chest rising and falling fast. I cannot run anymore, she said softly, her voice breaking. Daniel crouched beside her, placing the torch in the ground. You don't have to, not tonight, he said firmly. They won't find us here. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. The soldiers were skilled hunters, and if they brought scanners, the cave might not keep them hidden still. For now it was the only chance they had. Arya leaned her head against the cold stone, her silver eyes reflecting the torchlight. You risked everything for me, she whispered. Why? Daniel paused, his jaw tight. He thought of his quiet life before this, his simple house, his fields, his fire, and now he was running through the forest, hunted by alien soldiers because of a girl he had met less than a day ago. Finally, he answered, because I couldn't watch you die. For a moment, silence filled the cave except for the drip of water. Arya's lips trembled, but she gave a small, grateful smile. You are different from the others, she whispered. My people feared humans, but you are not what I expected. Before Daniel could reply, a faint sound reached his ears, the hum of engines, distant but steady. He stood quickly, torchlight flickering against the walls. They're sweeping the skies, he muttered. They're still searching. Arya's eyes widened in fear. They will not stop, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. They will burn the forests, they will burn everything, until they have me. Daniel tightened his grip on the knife at his side, his eyes sharp. Then we don't let them, he said, his voice low and hard. In that moment, something had changed in him. He was no longer just hiding her. He was ready to fight. ******. The cave was dark and silent, but Daniel's ears caught the faint vibrations of engines outside. The hunters were close, their ships circling above the forest like hawks searching for prey. He pressed his hand against the cold rock wall, his mind racing. If they stayed, they would be trapped. If they ran, they would be hunted down. Arya sat quietly on the stone floor, her cloak wrapped around her trembling body. The faint glow of her wrist flickered like a dying star. She looked up at Daniel, her silver eyes full of worry. They will find us, she whispered. They always do. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we make sure they regret it, he said, his voice low and sharp. There was no fear in his eyes, now only determination. He was not a soldier, not a warrior, but he was human. And humans did not break easily. He moved deeper into the cave, searching through the shadows until he found old supplies left from hunters of the colony. A broken spear, a coil of wire, some dried resin used to light fires. Daniel's hands worked quickly, his mind building traps from scraps. If the soldiers came inside, they would not leave unharmed. Arya watched him silently, her expression unreadable. You fight without weapons of power, she said softly. Yet you act as if you can face armies. Daniel gave a small grim smile. You don't need power when you know how to use the land, he replied, tying the wire across the cave entrance. We humans have survived worse than this. Outside, the voices grew louder, echoing through the night, a harsh metallic command barked out in the alien tongue. Boots crunched against wet earth. Moving closer, Daniel blew out the torch, pulling Arya deeper into the cave. Stay behind me, he whispered, his knife gleaming faintly in the dark. The first soldier entered, his scanner glowing green. Step forward, heavy armor scraping against the walls. Then his foot caught the wire, with a sharp snap. A slab of rock Daniel had loosened earlier swung down, striking the soldier's helmet with brutal force. The alien collapsed with a roar, sparks flying from his visor. The second soldier pushed past, shouting, but Daniel leapt from the shadows, driving his knife deep into the alien's side. The soldier screamed, swinging his weapon wildly. Daniel ducked low, tearing the blade free. His movements fast and desperate. He was not trained, but he fought with the raw fury of survival. Another soldier fired into the cave, the red beam scorching the stone. The light revealed Daniel's face mud-streaked, eyes blazing with rage. He grabbed the broken spear, snapping it forward with all his strength. The jagged tip pierced the alien's throat, and the soldier fell choking onto the ground. Arya gasped, her eyes wide. Daniel stood over the bodies, breathing hard, his chest heaving. His hands trembled, but not with fear, with adrenaline. 3 soldiers lay broken in the dirt, killed by a man with nothing but scraps. Outside, more voices shouted. The hunters had heard the fight, and now they were coming. Daniel turned to Arya, his voice rough. Can you fight? Arya shook her head, her wrist glowing faintly. Not for long, she whispered. But I can try, Daniel nodded. Then save it, he said. I'll hold them off as long as I can. The next wave came fast, soldiers storming into the cave with glowing weapons raised. Daniel charged forward with a roar, swinging the spear like a club. He smashed it into the first soldier's chest, knocking him into the wall. Another fired, the beam grazing Daniel's arm, burning his sleeve. Pain shot through him, but he did not stop. He slammed into the soldier, grappling him with raw strength. The alien was stronger, armored, but Daniel's fury was relentless. He smashed the alien's head against the stone until the helmet cracked. Arya's wrist burned brighter. She raised her hand, and a blast of silver energy shot out, striking 2 soldiers at once. They fell back, armor sparking, their weapons dropping to the ground. The cave shook with the echo of her power. Daniel glanced at her, shocked, but she staggered, nearly collapsing. I cannot do more, she gasped. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her steady. You've done enough, he said firmly, placing her against the wall. The last soldier charged forward, weapon glowing. Daniel grabbed a burning branch from the floor, lit from the spilled resin, and hurled it at him. The soldier's armor caught fire, flames crawling across his chest. He screamed and stumbled backward out of the cave. Silence returned, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. The floor was littered with broken weapons, shattered armor, and scorched stone. Daniel stood in the center, covered in sweat and blood, his knife dripping. He looked less like a farmer now and more like a predator. Arya stared at him, her silver eyes wide with awe. You fight like a death worlder, she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel wiped the blood from his face with his sleeve, his expression grim. I fight like a human, he said simply. Outside, the engines roared louder. The ship circled again, beams of light searching the forest. More soldiers would come, stronger and more prepared. Daniel turned to Arya, his voice sharp but calm. We can't stay here, he said. They'll bring reinforcements. He grabbed one of the fallen soldier's weapons, its glow humming in his hand. Come on, princess, we're not done yet. Arya rose weakly, her cloak torn and her eyes still shining with fear and wonder. She looked at Daniel, this human who had risked everything for her, And for the first time, she understood why the galaxy whispered about humans. They were not the strongest, not the most advanced, but they were unbreakable. Together, they stepped out of the cave into the cold night. The hunt was far from over, but now, the hunters knew what it meant to corner a human. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The forest was quiet again, but it was not peace. The air smelled of smoke and scorched metal, proof of the battle that had taken place. Daniel and Arya moved quickly under the shadows of the trees, their bodies tired but their eyes sharp. Above them, the alien ships circled like vultures, their searchlights sweeping the valley. Daniel held the stolen alien weapon in one hand, its glow casting a faint blue across his face. His other hand gripped Arya's wrist, guiding her through the thick branches and uneven ground. She stumbled, often, her strength fading, but she never complained. The girl who had once been a frightened stranger now carried herself with quiet courage. At last they reached a clearing, where the remains of an old colony outpost stood. Rusting walls and broken towers leaned against the night sky, but hidden beneath the ruins was something more. A ship small, scarred, but still alive. Daniel had found it years ago, an abandoned vessel left from a forgotten war. Now it was their only hope. Arya stopped, her silver eyes wide as she saw it. "A starship," she whispered, her voice trembling with hope and fear. Daniel nodded, pulling away the vines that covered the metal. "It's old, but it can fly," he said. "If we can get it off the ground, we can escape this valley." They slipped inside, the stale air thick with dust. Daniel moved quickly, activating old panels, his hands steady despite exhaustion. He had worked on machines his whole life. And though this ship was alien, its bones were the same. The engines groaned as power returned, dim lights flickering across the cabin. Arya sat in the co-pilot's chair, her cloak falling away from her glowing wrist. She looked around with wonder, but her eyes soon grew heavy with sorrow. "If we fly," she whispered, "they will chase us into the stars. They will never let me live." Daniel glanced at her, his face serious. "Then we don't let them catch us," he said simply. But Arya shook her head slowly. "You do not understand, Daniel," she said softly. "If I leave this world, I must return to mine, to my people, to fight for the throne that was stolen. It is my duty, my destiny." Her silver eyes glistened with tears. "But if I go, I cannot stay with you." The words hit Daniel harder than any weapon. He had not realized how close they had become, how deeply he cared for her. From the stormy night she arrived to the battles they fought side by side, she had become more than a guest, more than a secret. She had become someone he could not imagine losing. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the engines. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice rough. "Then you'll have to choose, Arya," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "The throne, or your freedom." Arya lowered her gaze, her hands trembling as she touched the glowing seal on her wrist. "This mark binds me," she whispered. "Without me, my people are slaves, my enemies will rule forever." Tears fell down her pale cheeks. "But with you, I feel safe, I feel alive." Daniel reached across the cabin and took her hand. "You are not alone anymore," he said firmly. "Whatever you decide, I'll stand with you." Before she could answer, a sudden roar shook the night. The alien ships had found them, their lights flooding the clearing. Engines screamed overhead as soldiers descended in waves, weapons glowing. The outpost walls shook with the force of their landing. Daniel jumped to his feet, gripping the weapon tightly. "They're here," he growled. Arya rose beside him, her silver eyes glowing faintly, her fear gone. She stood taller now, her voice calm and strong. "Then this is where the choice is made." The first soldiers stormed into the ruins, their weapons raised. Daniel opened fire, the stolen blaster roaring with light. He moved with fierce precision, every shot powered by fury and survival. The soldiers fell, but more poured in. Arya lifted her glowing wrist, and a wave of silver energy burst out, striking the attackers and sending them crashing into the walls. The air burned with smoke and fire, the ground trembling under the battle. But through it all, Daniel and Arya stood side by side, man and princess, human and alien, fighting as one at last. The ships above began to pull back, their engines screaming. Into the sky, the soldiers retreated, their forces broken by the fury they faced. The clearing fell silent again, except for the crackling of fire and the heavy sound of breathing. Arya lowered her hand, the glow fading, her body trembling with exhaustion. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her close. She looked up at him, her silver eyes shining with tears and light. "They will come again," she whispered. "They will never stop." Daniel met her gaze, his voice steady. "Then let them come," he said. "Because now they know what a human is willing to do." Arya smiled weakly, her face close to his. "I must return one day," she whispered. "But until then, may I stay with you?" Daniel held her tighter, his heart heavy but full. "You already know the answer," he said softly. Together, they turned toward the ship, its engines glowing brighter now, ready to carry them into the unknown. The storm had passed, but a greater storm waited among the stars. Daniel and Arya stepped forward, hand in hand, not as strangers, not as hunted prey, but as allies bound by fate. The galaxy was still searching for the lost alien princess, but no one knew. She was no longer alone. She had found a human willing to fight for her, and this was only the beginning. ****.